and it is hashtag Love, Right, Create, and I'm Kallie Ross, and I have Morgan Wylie, and I also have Gaby Robbins,
Woo!
and we're super excited because we haven't like done a hangout in like weeks because somebody was moving across the country or something, and then somebody went to Texas and was gone for a week.
And somebody's a loser and was home the whole time.
You're not a loser. It's just
Oh.
you were busy at home, right?
Right.
Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about editing, which normally would be such a boring topic, but because we're hashtag Love Right Create, it will not be boring.
Never.
I have some exciting questions for you ladies to answer. And it was hilarious because we first jumped on. You guys weren't watching yet, and Gabby was like, I don't really have anything to say about editing. And I was like, you are the most uber editor I've ever met, and it's because she edits before she has to edit. And for those of you that are sitting out there watching us,
Don't do that.
you write, and you edit, and then you write, and then you edit, and then you edit again, and then you never let anybody read it because you're like, I'm not done editing.
Yeah.
Now, I was guilty of this in the beginning when I first started writing because I would just edit the crap out of everything. But I have a few questions for you ladies, and I wanted to ask you, do you edit while you write the rough draft, like that first rough draft of your novel? Now, I kind of already spilled the beans about Gabby, but Gabby, I'd like for you to maybe expound on that, like how you edit, now that I've totally, like, you know.
Well, I feel like, too, this is my first go. So in my thought process of feeling like I've gotten my backstory and I've done my outlining, I thought, okay, once I've done this, then I'll just sit and write. But I've recognized I'm not that kind of writer. And it's not been fulfilling, and it stressed me out because I felt like I need a direction, and I need to know, like, more specific key points. So I've written my first couple chapters a couple of times and gone through them a couple of times because I realized, oh no, I want this specific foreshadowing or this specific item to happen, almost like I didn't realize I wanted it to be that way. So for me, I think it's less editing and more of like, wait a second, that was, I want there to be a different, like, catch. I want there to be more background. It's almost like I want to know what's going to happen, what happened in the past, so that I can go forward and it be clearer, and it hasn't been. And I think that's just, I don't have a ton of time to dedicate to it, and then when I do sit down, I overthink it all. But it's actually coming. I've gotten a lot more work done in the past couple of weeks than I have in a long time, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I probably do self-edit more than I need to, but I think it's my first try, so we'll see if I can get the first draft done without redoing it like I have been. So.
Okay, but there is a huge difference between edits and rewrites.
Right.
Would you consider how you've changed or edited things to be so drastic that it would be considered a rewrite instead of just a plain old edit?
I think it is a rewrite. I think because the main character, I've pretty much changed up how she responds to one of the other main characters in a pretty significant way. So yeah, I think it is more of a rewrite. But I think that's all too learning my writing style. We've had this discussion before, the pantsers and, the plotters, and I thought, well, I'm a plotter, and I think I've plotted, but I don't think I've plotted enough to make me feel comfortable to go with the story. Whereas I was kind of watching the way Morgan and other people would write, where they kind of have an idea, but they're so good at just sitting and letting the story come to them, where that it didn't work for me that way. So I think it's learning your writing style too. As far as your first go, I'm just learning how to do that. I feel like if I had more time to dedicate to it, I would probably learn that a little earlier, and I wouldn't be this far into it and having to go back. But I feel like it's good now. I feel really happy with where I'm going with it. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, so Morgan, you have got a lot that you've probably written and edited. I'd love to know, first of all, how you do that now, like if you edit while you write. But I'd also love to know how it's progressed over each
Hmm.
novel.
Hmm. Okay. I do not typically edit while I write. I'm kind of a write and then go back to the beginning and edit and revise. However, if I'm in the middle of writing and I come across something that I get stuck or something's not working, I will go back and do not edits, but probably similar to what Gabby was saying. It's just more revising, changing things. But I usually save, you know, technical things until the end. Because I just need to feel like I don't want to spend my time doing that when I need to make sure that my story is actually going somewhere.
Right.
However, now working on book 3, I've found that I still pretty much do the same, but I think that I'm learning from my edits, and you know, when I get my manuscript back from the editor, and I find myself remembering, oh yeah, I did this, and well, she changed it, and so and so I work that in, and I kind of change things as I go, or it's just becoming more natural to, I don't know, catch on quicker to some of the technical things that that I probably should know but didn't. Um, so that I feel like I'm evolving in that and growing in that, and so that's cool because then that just means less work for the editor. Um, but yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about edit, like, do we edit while we write the rough draft? And I guess I should answer this too. I do tend to edit, and but I would also say that mine are more like rewrites because, for instance, my current work in progress, I got about 10 chapters into it and then added a whole new element and had to practically rewrite the whole thing from scratch.
Mhm.
I did try to keep a lot of the dialogue, but some of the underlying stuff, and then also I also changed it from one point of view to two points of view, and that messed everything up. So while I do tend to like to edit while I am writing, I will also be very honest and say that sometimes with me, because this is only my second novel that I'm writing, that they do tend to be rewrites because I feel like sometimes I'm not completely sure of the story, and then kind of what Morgan you were saying, sometimes the story changes as you're writing it, and so you kind of have to go back and make a few changes.
Right.
In my case, it was just not a few; it was a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but with Descent, I was like you, Gabby, where I was writing like one day a week for 2 hours, and that was it. So I would have to go and reread everything I'd written before and then start writing again, and I'd find myself editing while I was reading that stuff, and then
Yes.
it would take up way too much time, which was so annoying.
Yeah.
So, but with all of that said, I would really love to define what is your definition of edits, because there are so many different types and styles of editing that
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you consider your type of edit. Like, what do you edit, and then also when you define edits, what do you not edit because you let someone else do it?
Yeah.
Morgan, why don't you start with that one?
Um. Okay. So how do I edit?
Or like, what do you consider edits for you?
Well, anything that I see that I think should be changed.
Well, I mean, think
More
about
of like what is your process? Like once you finish your first draft, what do you do first, and what do you leave to somebody else?
Okay.
Well, I do everything that I know how to do. Um, sorry, I have a printer going. So after I get through my rough draft, I take some time off because I need to kind of get away from the story for a little bit, and then come back to it fresh, and then I read through it. I try not to do any major things and just read through it and see how it flows, and then I'll go back through, and I usually print mine out because I feel like I get a different perspective when I do it with pen and paper, and so I'll usually do that kind of chapter by chapter. You know, I think mainly, I don't know, I guess I leave really, I guess I'm not sure what I leave because, to be honest, I'm not sure I'm strong enough in uh, technical things and grammar, so I leave whatever I guess is left for the editor, hoping that she will catch those things. A lot of it tends to be commas. I have issues with commas. So more structure, technical things. But as far as like conceptual stuff, I pretty much do all that myself, unless beta readers or first readers with you all see things. Then so anyways, so I go through that. I go through it a few times doing that, and then making sure it flows, and then I pass it on to hopefully my dear friends that will read it first and tell me if it sucks, and then after those fixes, then I send it to the editor.
Okay, so then, Gaby, I know that you're at a different place, but I kind of want to know what your expectations are of finishing your manuscript and what you plan to take care of, what you plan to pass on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like for me, and this is just from reading what you have sent to me, you both and anybody else has sent to me, is that I am much more attuned to story and dialogue and character and the arc of the story and that kind of thing, because I promise you I will sit and look at a sentence and be like, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this sentence, and somebody else will be able to pick out 4 or 5 technical issues with it. I feel like I know that I'm going to have to sit and read through my story just so that I feel like it's solidly based where I want it to be as far as the story arc and all of that stuff, and I'm going to have to leave all the technical grammar and structure and everything to somebody else, because I just see what I want to say, and I know for a fact that half of the way that I'm doing it is going to be wrong. So yeah, I know that I'm going to have to lean on my friends and a really good editor for that, because it hasn't been, I don't have a good memory for the rules of grammar, which I found my high school like writing book that has, it's called like Writer's Ink, and it has just like basic grammar rules, and I've literally been reading it because I'm hoping that I can absorb this so that I don't have as many edits and problems with my writing. So yeah, I know that that's going to be something I'm going to need tons of help with.
Yeah. Well, I think that the first thing that's important about the editing process is knowing where you need help, because that's what editing is. Editing is helping you to perfect and streamline, your writing. One thing I think that's interesting is like I've worked with 2 different editors, and they have been valuable in 2 different ways. But one thing I think that neither of you have talked about, Morgan, you touched on it a little bit, and Gaby, I think you alluded to it, but we don't really call them editors, and that's our beta readers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys, other than the 3 of us, have anyone else that beta reads for you, or and I also think it's interesting that when it comes to editing, some writers like to have beta readers read as they write. And then other writers, Morgan, like to have people read it after everything's finished.
And she won't tell you what happens in the next one either.
It's so great to have coffee with these 2 women and have Gaby completely, after every sentence, say something like "Dagan." Just insert the word, because there are some of us that we love to beta read in between the, like every couple of chapters, and but then there are writers that are like, no, it's not happening until I finish the novel, Morgan. Because I'm one of those, I'm like, hey, I wrote 2 chapters, here you go, tell me what you think. But Morgan, you're not like that at all.
I'm not. But then you send it to me, and I read it, and then I want more, and you don't have more to give me, and so then it's just
hard too.
I'm frustrated. So,
but as an author, I think that makes me feel really great, because it makes me think, okay, there's something there, even if it's not perfect yet. There's something there. But it also, I will tell you what, when a beta reader has questions, that can be more important to your story than an extra comma or a missing comma.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that your beta readers, as much as they are not editors, as far as content is concerned, I feel like a beta reader can really bring extra life and an extra set of eyes to a story that, as the author, you may be honed in on a specific character, especially if it's from their point of view, and you may miss some other things that your reader might catch on to. And I think it fills out the story when you can answer those questions for the reader.
Right, totally.
No, that's true. I agree. Okay, maybe I will try this next book to start sending you some chapters.
What? Who are you?
I don't know. I moved to Washington and went crazy.
It was probably the ball of yarn you drove by.
But I will say that, because I don't know if you know this, but I do have some beta readers that I send after y'all read it. I kind of call you my first readers, or I don't know. Are you critique partners? Is that what you all are to me? Is that what we are, or are we just readers?
I don't know, because honestly, I have you two, and then I've got I've got two other friends that read, but they don't write. So I don't know what they call it if your beta readers are another author. So I guess it's like kind of like a core group. But then I also have two readers that I have read it that are just readers, because I kind of want that point of view.
Right.
And of course, in my case, because I work with students, I try to have at least one or two teenagers read it.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I get a better idea that it's going to connect to a teenager. I want it to connect to a 35-year-old too. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to know.
Just a few chapters that I've gotten done, and obviously they're completely different now. I've had other people that I trust, and I think because we're all girls, I always have that desire for some reason to really have a guy's point of view. You know, like, is this totally girly? Like, really? Because there's a little bit of a desire that somebody could read it across the board and enjoy it. And I think that's one thing I love about reading books that my husband will read, because then we have really cool discussions. So obviously my husband will read it, and he's read everything and every different way that I've written it. And then just recently, when I was going to give you guys my first two chapters and then everything changed, I had my 14-year-old read it, which kind of freaked me out a lot. But she was like, I really like it, and then started asking me more questions, which was really awesome. So, she's asked to read more of it, and she's also asked me to put in certain characters and certain things and certain powers and things like that, which I think is so fun. So, yeah, that's great. And then I have a friend he's a writer, but he's a musician, a friend of my husband's, who he's doing his first novel, and so he's like, can I just see what you have? And it was one of those, like, okay, then you'll, like, let me see yours, and he's like, yes, I'll send you mine. So he's read it, and it was just an interesting conversation. I mean, obviously, I don't have a ton of it to pass off, but what I have shared, I think it's just people that are different from our core group that I wanted to kind of have insight into. And I know that there'll be my nephew who is in Chicago. He really wants to read something, and then a good friend who's encouraged me to write. She's dying for something, but she's also very picky about what she reads, so I think I need to get it a little more polished up before I send it to her, so just like I'm doing before I send it to you guys. So, yeah, that's who reads my stuff.
Well, and I think it totally changes the idea of who an editor is in our eyes, because there's more than just one editor. I mean, there's more than just one person that makes sure that you don't have like 50 million commas, or that you add the plural s to the end of a word, which that's my big thing, is I'll forget the ed, or I've left off the s. And so when it comes to actually hiring someone to edit you that way, I think that those people are valuable, but I also think that there are a lot of people that are editors throughout the process that help us out. And it is so hard to find those people that will beta read, but they are out there. You just have to put yourself out there. That's the hard part. like Gabby said, it's hard when you know that there's someone that they read a lot or that they have high standards. But if you want to make your work better, those are the people that you want to read your work.
Yeah.
But with that said, I really am curious about an editor in general. I feel like that we should warn some of our watchers and people that are reading our posts and stuff about what to expect with an editor when you actually hire one.
Mm-hmm.
I was very blessed to work with someone that was referred to me by a friend for my first editing round. But then when I decided to self-publish, I went through a second round of edits, and it ended up becoming, it was a close friend of mine that's actually doing those edits. But I know, Morgan, yours is a little different type of situation where you've hired someone, and then Gabby, you've got something to look forward to when it comes to finding someone to edit your work. But do y'all have any tips or warnings for people that are watching about editors that maybe they need to watch out for? Morgan, what about you?
Like you said, I think it's important to either be referred to someone or make sure that you have read something else that they have claimed to have worked on, just to see, see how they work. But then also, most editors, actually I'm not even sure if there are any that don't do this, but that will give you a free, like a critique over so many words, just so you can kind of see how they work, see how the process is, and see if you connect, and because there are some editors you may not like how they edit your stuff. You want to be careful that they don't change your voice, that they're not making it more of them, but that they're doing all the technical things that you need, that your story needs, but to make sure that they're not changing your story. And really, it comes down to, you are the boss. You are hiring these people, and you can fire them too. You're in charge, so you do not have to make the changes that they suggest. They are suggestions. Their goal should be to better your story and help you along, but they are suggestions. So I guess those are kind of warnings. Don't ever pay an editor up front. There are some that will ask for, after so many words, they'll ask for a partial down, but do not ever give them a full, because there have been people that have not gotten their manuscripts back, and they've lost their money. So there are some not honest people out there, but not to be afraid. I mean, that's why it's important to find referrals or people that that have a good reputation. Mm-hmm. You can usually figure that out pretty good by online.
Yeah, and I was going to say that the referral is so important. Reading their work is really important. Again, don't give them all the money up front. But I think for me, narrowing it down to the right editor really was that process where I gave a couple of editors the first chapter of my novel, and then they did their thing and sent it back, and that way I got to see 2 or 3 different points of view and how they edited, and that's how I picked my editor. It was one of those that it just clicked. Like I could tell she got my main character better than the other editor.
I like that you did that. That was cool.
But anyway, because they do that free sample, you go ahead and get it from 3 or 4 people, especially if they're people that have worked with authors that you like. And that's another key thing. Like, if you read indie self-published books, find out who edited those books, because if they're self-published, that probably means that there's someone you could hire too. Mm-hmm. But again, I think that, like Morgan said, don't be scared by it, Gabby.
Mm-hmm. But you gotta find someone. I'm not scared by hiring an editor. I'm scared by finishing a book.
Well, who do you think that? I mean, like, do you think you have a good idea of the process you'll go through when it comes to editing your novel when it's finished?
Yeah, I think this would be the goal, is to finish it and then, give it some time, and then, do just a story edit, just to make sure it's solid and it has what I want, and then I'll probably hand it off to you guys, and then start looking for an editor for it more, technically and grammatically. If I find an editor who happens to be good, like, I know that when you showed us your samples of your editors, there were some that were strictly technical and some that kind of gave you more insight into how they felt the story flowed and things like that. I definitely think if it was somebody I was comfortable with and respected, I wouldn't mind that kind of input, but I think ultimately I'm going to be looking for story editing from you all and from my beta readers, and then technical stuff from an editor, just to make sure, like, grammatically it's not total hood rat, which is what I'm hoping it's not going to end up being. So.
Well, and that was going to be my next topic, because there are different types of editors. There are content editors and there are line editors, and so depending on how much you want to pay an editor, their rate will be a sliding scale based on how many words you have or pages, but then also the type of editing you want them to do, because some editors will do that content editing where they are looking at that plot or that story arc, and they are looking at the character development, and they'll give you that input if you want, because that's what my second editor is doing for me. It kind of should have been flip-flop for me, I think, but when I was just learning for the first time, I just hired someone to correct the grammar. She did a couple of little, tips or suggestions for different. I don't even know if it was to the extent of a plot line, but it was for character information, like why is she thinking this, or she would ask me those questions. But then, before I decided to self-publish, I had a really close friend who's a writer read it, and the reason I chose her is because she doesn't write fiction. She doesn't write young adult. She doesn't write adventure or fantasy. And so I kind of wanted an editor that didn't have anything to do with any of those genres to look at it and tell me what they thought. And she's really handling a lot of content editing, and she's asking more of those questions. And I feel that I've benefited from it, because that's another thing that I want to talk about is, are all of your beta readers writing the same stuff that you write? Morgan, what about you?
After you all, my beta readers that I have 3 of them, they are not writers. They are readers and reviewers. So they basically give me feedback on the story itself. They usually don't give me any kind of edits other than questions about the story, or just really kind of just gauge their reaction to see if they even like it.
What about you, Gabby? Is there anyone that you have that's reading it? You said you have a songwriter reading it?
Yeah, he's a songwriter, but he writes really high fantasy stuff. So his stuff is completely different, off the wall stuff, and he has read a lot of the books that I've read. So I know what he has an expectation. I feel like I think it's great that you send it to readers and reviewers, because I feel like they have a good grasp of stories as a whole and what they like and what grabs them, and the things that are cliche or things that they might have read a lot of. That's kind of what I want to know. Like, oh, that's the storyline from such and such, and you're like, oh, crud. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to know, and have people who actually read the genre. But I don't, besides you guys, I don't have any, like, professional published authors reading it, so.
Well, and I feel like that. I feel like that it's important to have someone that doesn't write your genre read it, because not only is it something that they might have better and more interesting questions for you about your novel, but I think they kind of can bring a little bit outside of your genre to your writing that might be interesting to a reader that only reads your genre. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
Yeah, my editor right now, she wants to write for the National Geographic. So, like, when you have someone reading your work that wants to write pieces for the National Geographic, they're automatically, the first thing that we discussed is my setting. Like, she is all about my setting. So it's one of those weird things where I found it very helpful, and her focuses are so different than my own, and I think that that's good for my writing and good for my story. Okay. So one last question. Is there such a thing as final edits?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think that I'm going to be editing Descent for the rest of my life.
Well, and I think there has to be a point where you just are like, I'm just done with this. Sure, you could edit it and re-edit it and change things and forever. And if you want to do that, I think, sure, go ahead. But I think at some point to be able to move on, you have to be able to kind of just be, you know what, it's okay.
But
I don't
doesn't
know.
every author feel that way? Like I've heard big authors like J.K. Rowling and different that says, I wish I wouldn't have had that whole story, like that whole plot point in it, or it was way too long. I should have made it shorter. Like I feel like you always can look back and find something
Oh,
to fix or change.
yeah, I think always.
Now, I will say technically, if you can go back and find 4 or 5 technical, like, misspelled words or the wrong word, then I think you didn't edit enough. But I think story-wise, you could always go back and change something, right?
Yeah. I think you can edit until your fingers bleed. Like or your brain explodes. I mean, because there are so many things I think as writers that we grow with each book that
Right.
when you're on your second or third book, I have a feeling that I'm going to go back to Descent after every
Yeah.
novel and think, oh, I wish I would have known this or learned this when I was writing that first novel or that second
Right.
novel.
Yeah,
And I'm not there yet, but Morgan, I know you've been there.
yeah, and I feel that way now. Even like I said, I'm in book 3, but there are things that I wish I would have thought ahead enough to add in, or maybe change, or just even add more to. Um, so I'm even thinking probably after book 3. I don't know when. I don't know, but I'd like to at some point go back and kind of do one revamp, have an editor go through it again, and then probably be done with it. It's like I almost wish that I could have written the entire series, be done with it, and then go back before anything was released, had it all edited and put together, and then here's a final package. But that
Well,
didn't happen.
that brings up a really good point, Morgan, because I thought about this earlier and I just forgot until you said this. But when you're choosing an editor and you know you're writing a series, it's important to know that you're going to like that editor enough to work with them throughout the series, because to change the editors can actually change the story. Am I right?
Yeah.
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 So just make sure you really like your editor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Gabby's giving me like the help me face. Okay, so that's all I have this week. But I think it was good conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one more point, if you don't mind.
No, please go for it.
Because we kind of touched on this, I think, in just our own conversation, that even after having an editor go through it, possibly even 2, I think, and I found this, I think it's important to even have someone go back and read after the editors have been through, because editors are human and they miss things, and they can't do everything, and or you went to fix something and you accidentally changed something else while you were fixing the thing that they fixed, or because I found even myself, I'm incorporating a last reader before I publish, just to kind of go over the whole thing, just see. So that's a thought.
No, I think that's a great idea, because that's what y'all are doing for me right now. And that's a part of like having an arc. That's one thing that before I released the novel, I had more than one person tell me, you need to have kind of an arc. Morgan, you do this too. But it's ready a month ahead of time, and you can send it to reviewers, and they can start reading it, but they know there could be there still might be a few little mistakes in there. And then that way you have that last month to send it to your friends and say, hey, read this and tell me if I missed a period or a comma or added, an S when it didn't need to be there. And it makes a big difference, I think. Okay, so challenges for the week. I know that it's tough because I feel like I'm challenging myself in so many different ways right now. But I thought we could do a self-imposed challenge this week, where you guys can kind of, instead of it being about editing, because no. But let's each of us decide what our challenge is going to be for ourselves this week. Watchers, readers, you guys pick a challenge. Make sure it is a challenge. Do you guys have any ideas of something that you might challenge yourself with this week?
I think mine's just basic. I need to write. I haven't written in a while.
Mhm.
You know, moving, and I'm living in my in-laws' basement at the moment, waiting for my house to get ready. So I feel chaos, and things are out of order, and I'm not in my routine. So I'm finding just I need to write. I'm feeling like that urge, desire. I need to get it out. So I need to find time. I need to make the time and get some words down.
Yeah. What about you, Gabby? Anything?
Yeah, this weekend I tried something that I haven't done haven't ever done, which was I tried to clear my mind so that I could really think through plot things that have been bothering me while I was doing other things. Like, usually I'll put an audiobook on, which I recognize now I do it in the car, and it's probably keeping my brain from using that time to really think through those things that have been bothering me. So this weekend, what I tried to do was not put on an audiobook and just put music on, and like I was cleaning the toilets, talking to myself about my characters this weekend, but I ran downstairs and I have a page of notes of things that I was like, oh, okay, like, this is what I was talking about. I needed to figure this out. And so it really did spur some really good stuff. So I think this week I'm going to try to do that, just music and no reading and no, because I know everyone is like, you got to keep reading, but let me just tell you, I can't start and not finish a book. So it just takes up too much time right now, and I need to just make this my priority. So I think if I can do that, if I can get through Monday through Friday without audiobooks or regular books, that I'll kind of treat myself, and like maybe Sunday spend a couple hours reading. But I need to just kind of clear my brain space right now of everything, so that I can just be, when I'm not having the time to sit, at least I'm thinking things through. And kind of plotting while I'm driving or doing other things.
Mm-hmm. Well, mine is to write. Yeah, I'm gonna be writing this week, and I am so glad that all of the shows are having their season finales, because that's everything that's killing me.
I gotta watch that season finale. You reminded me. Shoot.
And you're welcome. It's still Sunday night. Just stay up late, and then you'll be clear tomorrow. But yeah, I think for me, I just have to sit down and write. I've got to make time to write every single day.
Yeah.
And not put it off and say, oh, well, I'll just write extra tomorrow. Like, that's really going to happen. It never happens. So for me, it's just setting that time aside. And yeah, I've got to do it because DEA is coming up, and then I've got another couple days where I'm not going to be writing. So yeah, I've got to. And I also think it'll be good because it'll take my mind off of everything else that's going on with Descent. I know that sounds ridiculous, but there are people that have it, and they might be reading it right now. I don't know what they think.
It's like, Gabriel is awesome, and he's got the best name ever.
I don't know if other authors feel this way, but after you send it to people and then you don't hear anything back because they're supposed to put their review up on, the release day like they're supposed to, you kind of want them to tweet something to you like, I'm reading it, or it's good so far, or just something good.
Don't forget about me.
I remember the first time I let Morgan read, like, it was literally, 2 pages? And I said, you don't have to say anything, just tell me, does it sound like a book? Like, it could be a book. Like, it sounds like a book. It's those dumb things you're like, I don't know if I can do it.
I know.
Oh, we're just a bunch of little girls when it comes to this. Get this out. Like, I just need to suck it up and move on. So I need to write this week.
Yes.
Okay, next week we're going to talk about BEA and book conventions in general, I think.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Is that after or before you leave? I don't know when you leave.
Before.
Okay.
Because then I'll try and get to work on my BEA schedule a little bit, and that way I can talk about like which authors are going to be there and which books I want to get and that sort of thing. But I also like to kind of discuss I know that we have Utopia coming up, and so that would be something we can throw in there, and like our expectations for different things and the different types of conventions that there are, because it's going to be coming up pretty soon at the fall. There's a whole new circle of conventions that happen.
Yeah.
So we can talk just a little bit about it and what, as writers, which conventions tend to be more helpful for writing and reading. Because I'm like Gabby, I like to read.
Yes.
And
I like to read too.
Yeah, then I don't write.
Yeah.
Okay.
And two, we need to schedule a time to talk about social media and big mistakes like the one I made this week and had to fix.
Uh-oh.
Well, maybe we can do that that next Sunday. I'll be getting back from BEA, but I should definitely not be tired at all.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, I guess we should sign off then. Thanks everybody for watching us.
Bye.
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 Hashtag Chris.